Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Castleberry Consultant LLC Money Moves Workshop Collection. Workshop number 5, Family Wealth Development, with our guest mediator, Ryan McCrary, CEO of McCrary Financial Solutions. Let's get straight into it. When it comes to family wealth development, two things that a lot of people have a misconception on is when it comes to wealth and cash or capital. Having a lot of money in the bank or in your pockets does not mean you're wealthy at all. It just means you have a lot of capital, a lot of startup money for some investments that could lead to wealth. So wealth is a collection of valuable materials and resources that appreciate in value. So having a bunch of mangoes may not be, wealthy because those things will eventually, rot and not be there anymore. But if you have a bunch of art collectibles, if you have a bunch, of real estate that you're maybe renting out, things of that nature, then obviously they're appreciating in value, bringing you money or equity. You should use capital in order to attain wealth. In order to do that, you would use your capital to make specific investments, whether that's invested in the stock market or trading on the Forex market or cryptocurrency or buying real estate or buying equity in a business. But you would use your capital to make an investment, and the return on that investment, once it becomes self-sufficient, would eventually turn into wealth. Another thing about wealth is you can liquidate assets if you need capital, as opposed to if you just have capital, which is one perk to being wealthy as opposed to rich. Wealth will also produce capital, although capital is not always used properly to produce wealth. So when it comes to wealth producing capital, let's say, you could think about a family like Jay-Z and Beyonce who owns a bunch of record, albums, what is he on? Rock Nation, record company. He used to own the sports agency. That's what we call wealth, because he will continue making money off of those things way after he's done doing them. He doesn't have to rap again to still make money off of rap. Beyonce doesn't have to sing again in order to make money off of singing.
Absolutely.
And lastly, assets produce interest, which is cash value can be used without liquidating the asset. So when it comes to real estate, if you bought a house in a specific part of town, let's say like Harlem, if you bought a brownstone, let's say 20 years ago, you could have got it for very cheap. And as the price of the area went up, so with the price or value of your real estate. Obviously, you wouldn't have to sell your house. You wouldn't have to sell your house in order to use that value either. You'd be able to use the interest on your house, to take out credit in order to do a lot of things. You could use that money. You could actually use that money in a loan as well in different circumstances, or whatever negotiations you'd like to bring out with another party. And on the capital. Capital is synonymous with money and cash. Capital can only be spent, essentially. It is vital that you spend your money on investments when you can to produce wealth. Capital will be taxed when inherited by children. So let's say the difference between somebody who has $1 million company and somebody who has $1 million in cash, when they leave them to their children, the $1 million company will not be taxed nearly at the rate, if at all, compared to the $1 million in cash that is left to the child or whoever is left to. The value of cash depreciates every year due to inflation, around 3%. If you were here for our last workshop, the You Must Invest workshop, we went over exactly what inflation is, which is simply the upping of price for the goods and services that we use every day. So every year, college tuition goes up 3%, rent goes up 3%, private school, high school tuitions may go up 3%, but not necessarily your salary. And for those people whose salary does go up 3%, if all of your bills also went up 3%, that doesn't necessarily mean that you still have a 3% return on your money. Capital is one economic resource, not the economic resource. So when it comes to economic resources, that's where you could have a business, you could have stocks, you could have bond, you could have real estate, you could hold precious metals, or you could hold capital. So just understand that cash is not king here. Cash is just one piece of the puzzle. Ryan, anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important. I just think a lot of people, have the misconception that just because someone has a whole bunch of cash that they have a lot of wealth. But there's definitely levels to money and there's levels to wealth. Like you can own a whole bunch of properties, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a whole lot of cash. So, once you get into different levels of wealth and ownership and, financial literacy, stuff like that, you understand that cash is good. But at the same time, we want to be wealthy. We want to have assets. We want these assets to produce income for us, produce cash for us. So, if you have properties that you can have equity in the property, or you can have residual income from, renting it out, or if you have stocks and bonds you need to liquidate, or whatever the case may be, you can have cash from that, and that still makes money for you, because the share price will grow, or you can get like dividends and stuff like that. So there definitely needs to be a distinction between that, because a lot of people think, because you have cash, you have a whole lot of money, which is good. But at the same time, the people that really get ahead, the people that really have money, are people that own assets. Those are the people that have wealth.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next, as I stated, wealth can be accumulated by a number of investments, which is business equity. So you don't have to be the sole owner of a business. You don't have to start a business per se, but you could own, 50% of a business, 10% of a business, 5% of whatever. You got to think you could own 10% of 10 different businesses, and that's essentially the same as owning one business.
Exactly.
You can own stocks, which will give you dividends and they appreciate anyway. So now you're essentially making money, in two categories just from owning the one asset. When it comes to real estate, it could be the same way. You could rent the property out and the value of the property could be growing depending on the area that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Precious metals like gold and silver, they've been, wanted since before any of us could imagine, being here. They've been wanted since the 1500s, and long before then, they're not going anywhere. So holding on to gold and silver is just as valuable as holding on to capital or, any of these others. And also artwork and antiques. The difference with artwork and antiques, because you see those asterisks there, is essentially that artwork and antiques really comes down to where you are. Because if you have some artwork of Picasso and stuff like that, and you come to, the people that I hang around with, we're probably not paying you a lot of money for it because I'm not really into that. But there are some paintings. There are some paintings like if you go on Instagram, there's a guy DSD painting. There's another dude CDR. Another lady I got paintings from, Whitney Austin. I like their paintings, you know what I'm saying? And there may be some other people that want Picasso over them. So just understand when it comes to collecting artwork, you need to know who your market is if you ever plan on reselling. A wealthy person typically has most of their net worth in assets or investments. So I know some people, maybe you've been bored before. I've done it with my college roommates. Where you just get bored and start looking at people's net worth to see, I ain't got much money. Let's see what some of these other people is really looking at. Some people got $50 million. Some people got worth $5 million. Some people worth $20 million. And you're like, some of the people that you would think, wow, this guy got $10 million. He's worth $10 million. How? I don't never see him with nothing. It's just all he does is own a bunch of gas stations and some ATMs, and those things produce income. It may not go straight to his pockets, but because he owns them, he's worth a lot. You know what I'm saying? Or she. And wealth is what typically pays off debt, not capital. So it's not very often that you're going to hear about somebody just getting a bunch of cash, saving it on the side, and paying off a long debt. Mostly because debt nowadays comes with interest. You get into the habit of paying compound interest if you're just paying a little bit every month. But when it comes to paying off debt, if you have wealth, now you can liquidate assets, or you could negotiate your loan based upon the wealth that you do have.
Mm-hmm.
You can also just sell an entire business, you know what I'm saying, and just, negotiate that the business is worth the same price as the wealth. Or let's say if you owe $100,000 and you have a business that's worth $70,000, and you say, hey, I'll sell you this $70,000 business for $100,000, it will appreciate in value. They can always counter your offer and say, we'll take it for $50,000, but I'm just saying, at least you have that negotiation, as opposed to if you have capital, there's only one set price for it. When it comes to capital, capital is affected differently depending on the owner. So when a corporation has capital versus when an individual has capital, a corporation has a lot easier time spending capital. Corporations can spend in bulk just from getting different licenses, like what is it, a wholesale license, where some states or cities, individuals may not be able to get it without owning a business. Also, corporations don't get taxed nearly as hard as individuals get taxed on their money. When it comes to the wealthy versus the non-wealthy, someone who's wealthy doesn't need to have a lot of capital in order to make, different business moves. Someone who isn't wealthy must have a lot of capital in order to make those moves. Think about somebody who has, 3 businesses behind them. If they say, "Can I borrow $1,000?" You don't mind lending them $1,000 because even if they don't give it to you, they have businesses that you can take $1,000 straight out of. Someone who does not have any business or assets behind them, they better have $5,000 before I offer them the 1,000. Otherwise, what is there to make me believe that I'll get my money back? And good credit and bad credit is almost the same as what I just said. But if you have good credit, you don't need to have a lot of money. Somebody with good credit that doesn't have a large salary can get a long credit line. But somebody with bad credit can have $200,000 and they're gonna have to make that cash work because no bank is lending them any money. Next point, time is worth more than money. Number one, because you lose time every single day. You can't reinvest your time and double it up and get some back later on. Is time, you got a time limit, and the closer you get there, the more value there is on your time. When it comes to money, you can play around with your money. You can get your money, late. You can get it early. You can get it steadily. But your time is worth more than your money. So just remember, you want to get to a point where you're able to collect capital without trading it for time, and get what some people call passive income, which is essentially you can, go sleep, you can go swimming, you can go read a book, and you still make your money. Like if you have, if you sell courses or if you sell products online, like myself or Ryan McCrary, who sells clothing. Would you like to get a little plug in there, Ryan?
Allblackapparel.com. Go to allblackapparel.com. We'll hook you up.
Cool. Allblackapparel.com. That's what he said. But yeah, if you sell things online, it's much easier to make money without being there. If you own assets like stocks, you can make money without having to go back and do anything with your stocks. Exactly. When you just have capital, you actually have to flip that capital in order, to produce it. So you actually have to go to work and put in 8 hours in order to get that money versus hire somebody else to go put in the 8 hours for you and get the money. Capital is essentially capital is either spent or invested. There is no middle ground. So if you're spending your money on pizza, if you don't plan on getting something out of that pizza, whether it's whatever you plan on getting out of that pizza, if you don't get anything out of that pizza other than just the joy of eating it, you spent some money. But if I take my money and I put it into an investment, and it takes 100 years for that investment to actually be to be worthwhile. At that point, it's still an investment. It's not like I just threw the money away. If I buy a chair, that's me spending money. If I buy a set of chairs that I'm going to eventually sell, now that's an investment. So just be sure to think about how you're using your money, whether you're just spending it, once and for all, or whether you're spending it towards an investment that'll pay you back later. And lastly, capital has little to no value if there's no market for it. So if you brought, let's say, the South African czar to a gas station in the Bronx, it doesn't matter if you got $1 million worth of it. If nobody knows anything about South African czar, they're not going to take it from you, and they're not going to trade anything with you for it. So you just got to understand that capital, even though it does have a large, value to you now, when you think about it more globally, there's a limited value on capital versus when you have wealth, you can use those things for negotiating purposes or physical purposes, essentially everywhere and at any time. Next thing I want to speak about is my Work for Your Kids system. This is a system that I'm implementing in my daily life. My wife plans on implementing it as well when her business is up and running, which should be in a few months. She'll have her own mobile notary service called State to State Notary, so look out for that. But yeah, basically it's a way for people. I mean, if you have good credit, then you could also use the system. But I'm specifically thinking about the people that are like me, stuck in student loan debt, who can't think about bankruptcy and who can't think about working a 9 to 5 to pay that off, and who are mathematically counted out and expected to die in debt. When you're expected to die in debt, the only thing you essentially think is, I gotta spend my cash, to live now, because there's no way I can save for later because collections is gonna take it or whatever. Here's a system in which you can find a way to get the, whatever assets or capital directly to your children before, collections or anybody gets a chance to take from it. Here we go. The procedure number one, I consider starting a home-based business, specifically because whether you're the owner of the business, or eventually your child is the owner of the business, or your wife's or husband is the owner of the business, whoever, as long as the person lives in the same home as you, you guys can still use the write-offs of mortgage or whatever home expenses you have that come along with a home-based business. If you'd like to hear more about tax write-offs for home-based business, you can go to our first workshop, What is an LLC, which was mediated by CPA Keith J. Harvey of Alliance LLC. Secondly, I like to tell people to start, a corporate investment portfolio with that business. Mainly because if you start your investment portfolio yourself, the income rate on it is going to be much harder and higher than if you did it through a company. Secondly, well, if you wanted to know more ways to, invest in stocks and real estate and all that stuff, you can also go to our last workshop, You Must Invest, mediated by Daniel Mann, serial investor. Third, grow a business to the point of residual and predictable income. Basically, because at the end of the day, when your kids turn 18, the plan is to sell the business straight to them. And rather than have them go through all the ropes of trying to get the business up and running and all of that. Because for all you know, they may have a business of their own that they're trying to do that with, because they'll have the insight of doing so with a parent of theirs owning a business. But you want to make sure that business is already receiving residual and predictable income. That way, if anything ever happened to you or the owner of the business, you don't have to worry about cash flow. Fourth is start a bank account for your child or children. Because at that point, next step is to either bring the children on as partners, or if they're old enough, sell the business directly to them. When you bring the children on as partners, the main thing you're doing from that, I'll come back to the slide, is where is it? You're getting good credit history for your children. And that's one thing that I think is very important, because nowadays it seems like credit and bad credit specifically is holding a lot of people back, whether you got bad credit from student loans, from a credit card, or one of your parents put a light bill in your name and you was a baby. So by the time you knew what credit was, yours was in the hole. And I know people in all scenarios. The next step behind, basically we're always one step behind when it comes to attaining wealth and capital in general. So rather than, just making sure our credit is good and spending the next 20, 30 years trying to lift our credit out the hole, why don't we take the next 2 to 3 years and, be sure that our children's credit is immediately up at 800 or however high the credit can go. Because in a lot of our cases, it's going to take much more effort and much longer time period to get our credit at a high number, when at the end of the day, we're getting our credit high to do what? Buy homes and start businesses and do things for our children anyway. So just invest in your children right away. Rather than you having bad credit, then starting a business, and then your child, starting another business when they get older, but then they don't really know how to run it because you didn't, get your business past a certain point. Get the business to a certain point. When they're old enough, give it right to them so they can take it to the next step. And they'll have this same process ready. So when their child gets to a certain age, their child can take it to the next step. And this also doesn't necessarily mean that your child has to run the business. Your child just needs to be a partial owner so they can get the business history and credit history of the business. So like in my case, I'll bring on my daughter as a partner for Castleberry Consulting. So by the time she's 18, she'll already be considered, a lengthy business owner for 10 plus years, which will make it much easier for her to go to the bank and take out a loan or take out a credit card or whatever, While the system is beneficial, you start a business that will ease the blow of home expenses. Some will be rent, mortgage, groceries, your cable bill, your light bill, and utilities, things of that nature. You can start an investment portfolio that will lead to another stream of income. So let's say you invest in stock. Let's say you started, a consulting company like we have here, and you started investing in stocks under a corporate account. Now, not only are you making money through your consulting or whatever, passive income you planned on producing, you now have dividends from stocks coming in. You buy real estate, you could rent that out and now have money coming, flat cash flow coming in from the real estate. You could start a foreign exchange trading account, which I actually just did this week. And now make a lump sum of money coming in to your business, from different avenues. So now let's say if you still ran the business and you did all the consulting, your children could pick the stocks and you get them in the stocks, or you can get your children learning real estate or foreign exchange trading, whatever it is, cryptocurrency. Fourth, your children will have the ability to learn at home material that they will not receive in school. I can assure you, I've never been to any public school that encouraged or taught entrepreneurship. I've never been to any college that encouraged or taught entrepreneurship. My high school definitely didn't, because the main thing that they tried to get us into was specific fields so we can get a good job after we get out of college, which is something that's been embedded into all of our heads. And like I said before, what happened, let's say in my scenario and a lot of my friends, our parents may not have gone to college. So when they came to us, their biggest thing was they want us to get to college. And once we graduated, they kind of didn't have an answer for us as to what to do after that other than get a job, because that's all they knew. So now let's fast forward to us. When it gets to us, we'll, come to Casbury Consulting, get some consultation, start a business, start investing. And then, eventually our kids will start a business and they'll need, capital for an even bigger business than the one that you started. And you won't be able to help them get that capital because your credit was in the hole the entire time. They don't know much about credit. But if you can get them ahead of the game and put a business that's already receiving multiple streams of income, and multiple streams of passive income with their name on it, and good credit, corporate credit and personal credit, you put them way ahead of the game, because there's not many people that have that, along with the knowledge of how to run a business, the knowledge of how to get credit, the knowledge of how to do taxes. Because again, these are things that they don't teach. If you want to learn how to do taxes, then they tell you to become an accountant, go take accounting classes. If you want to learn how to start a business, you basically are on your own, because I don't know any colleges that have those classes, because obviously there would be no reason for you to come back for a semester.
Exactly.
And lastly, your children become business owners at a young age, again, giving them a long history of business and credit. Anything you'd like to add, Ryan? I know you didn't.
Just on the business, I mean, mostly all business school professors have never owned or ran a business. So that's why, like an MBA, it stands for what it is, Master of Business Administration. So they teach you how to be a manager in a company, but not how to develop a business, how to market a business, how to sell, build a business, all that type of stuff. It's built for people, to really go get a job and stuff like that. So it's just real important. The easiest way to learn business is to actually have a business, learn from other real entrepreneurs, people that have businesses or sold businesses that actually do this. Because entrepreneurship is more than just like having a business. It's actually like a way of life. Entrepreneurship is a culture and it's a way of life. So you really got to get in if you really want to do it.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, the thing is, you can teach your children this stuff and they still go out and get a job somewhere else if they really want to. But at the end of the day, they have this knowledge that they're not going to get anywhere else.
Exactly.
And, you get to teach that to them as opposed to sending them or paying for somebody else to do it.
Exactly.
Next step after bringing your child on as a partner, or if they're 18, selling a business to them. Essentially, you'll put this in writing before you sell the business. But essentially, you want to keep yourself as a CEO or some sort of employee of the company. Basically, so you still have ties to the company, and you'll see how it plays when we talk about Kingman Insurance, the last step. But you always want to still be owner or employee of the company. That way, you can still work for the company and receive an income. Whether whether you're a CEO there and you run it, you get hired as CEO through, a smaller company that you want to run that way or something like that. I could start, Trevor LLC and then work CEO for Castleberry LLC, through my other company. But rather than do all that, you can just keep yourself as an employee and keep paperwork to confirm that. Next step is keep at least one child, because let's say you have 3 children and you start one business. Make sure at least if you're not the person that's at least a 51% owner, keep one of your children as the 51% owner. That way, there's always one person to make the final move, and you never have to worry about your children ever being bought out of the business. If you sell it to your kids instead of saying as owner, you make sure that there is a majority owner in the decisions. Yeah. And the last step is to take out a key man insurance policy on your phone. The reason I say this is because many of our parents, or many of us rather, we see online all the time the GoFundMe's and stuff when people die, and I really just want to help people get around that, because that shouldn't be the first or second or third answer to helping a family after a loved one dies. So key man insurance is essentially life insurance, but instead of me taking out life insurance on a life insurance policy on myself or my daughter, and as soon as I die, student loans come in and gobble up a giant chunk of it, and then taxes come in and gobble up another chunk of it, and whoever else. Key man insurance is essentially a policy that's owned by the company themselves. So Castleberry Consulting would take out a life insurance policy on myself, in which Castleberry Consulting will be the beneficiary of that policy. And in doing that, now my daughter, being owner of the company, reaps the benefits of that insurance without any collectors coming in and anything of that nature. The thing that gets tricky here is with that key man insurance policy, if you are an owner, if you are an owner of the business when you do die, there's a possibility that collections could come for a portion of your business because you owned it. So if you are someone who, let's say you turn 50 years old and you realize, oh man, like there's no way I'm paying off all this debt that I have, you're just out of luck with it. Although 50 years old is not too late to do that, but let's just say you got to that point in life, you want to make sure that you sell this business completely to your children. And it's not like you have to sell it for what it's worth. You could easily sell it for $1. As long as you claim that dollar on the taxes and have all the paperwork written out, you should be fine. But this key man insurance policy is important because this is a way for people in extreme debt to actually leave life insurance for their loved ones. Now, what a lot of people won't know is in 2006, under the George Bush administration, they basically put in a law where key man insurance will become taxable, will be considered taxable income by the company. But there's 3 things you have to do in order to avoid that. First is get over the notice and consent requirements, which is, as you can see here, the employee must be notified in writing prior to the issuance of the life insurance policy that the employer company intends to insure his or her life and what the maximum face amount of that can be applied for on his or her life. The employee provides written consent to being insured under the policy, and that the employer may choose to keep the policy in force even after the employee separates from services from the employer. And the employer must be notified in writing. The employee must be notified in writing that the employer is the beneficiary of all or part of the death benefit proceeds. Once you're done with this notice and consent requirement, make sure you have one of these 2 exceptions put into play. Exception number 1, the insured, the deceased person, was an employee at the business during the 12-month period or the year before they died. So at that point, you'd own a piece of the business. I mean, you'd be an employee, until death. So that's where I told you before, you could sell the business, but keep yourself as a CEO or some sort of employee with the business. Here, the insured or dead person was a director or highly compensated employee at the time the contract was issued. I don't know what highly compensated is, but I feel it's a lot easier to just keep yourself as an employee as opposed to try and be the highly compensated guy or woman at the time the contract was issued. So exception number one, be an employee until you die and get your notice and consent requirements in, and you should be fine. Exception number two, if any amount received, so let's say something happened where, let's say you decided you were going to act as CEO, under your own business because you didn't want to get, killed by taxes as an employee. Then exception number two you could use, any amount received by the employer business as a result of the insured's death is paid to a family member of the insured, a designated beneficiary of the insured under the contract other than the employer. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a family member. It could be, a friend or whoever, a loved one. Or a trust established for the benefit of a family member or other designated beneficiary or the insured's estate. So essentially saying you have a trust put aside that the person who died has money set aside to go into. So far it goes to a family member. Part of it goes to a family member. Part of it goes to someone that you designate, or it goes to a trust in the name of a family member or someone that you designate, or your estate. Or fourth, a family member, designated beneficiary, trust, or estate in exchange for any interest they hold in the corporation or employee. So essentially here is saying if the money is going to end up going to your family member or designated beneficiary because they own a portion of the business. In this case, this would be my daughter owning Castleberry Consulting. When I die, obviously she'll get the money as the owner. So we would fit exception two. So just keep those two things in mind. I'll be emailing you guys this link as well. But just keep those two things in mind when you do go after the life insurance policy. And still, make sure you meet with the proper people to get everything all aligned. But that's just one requirement I wanted to make sure that you guys know about. And some more reasons why this system is beneficial. Your children will establish history of business and asset ownership, ensuring a long credit line when they apply. Your children will have the financial and intellectual foundation to pursue their dreams instead of falling to the school, to college, to 9-to-5 system. So, some children don't want to be doctors. Some people don't want to be lawyers. Some children want to own a hospital. You know what I'm saying? Some people want to own the law firm. And your child actually have the knowledge and the perception to want and do that, as opposed to, just go to school, become the lawyer, go in debt, and work 9-to-5. Now they can put together a business that can help, lawyers and college students get out of that cycle, of, getting killed by those college tuition. If you're in extreme debt, specifically student loan debt, you'll be able to build and manage wealth without collectors coming for your children's inheritance, which we mentioned earlier. And that's in regards to not just the business, but the assets owned by the business, which is why I mentioned opening a corporate investment portfolio as opposed to an individual. Again, if you have an individual one, collectors and taxes will be able to eat at that versus had the company owned it and you left it, and versus had the company owned it and your child owned the company, it would go directly to it because the company already owns it. And lastly, you can still use the tax write-offs if you sell the business to your children. So essentially, if let's say you put in writing that this business will always pay for the CEO's housing, or the CEO's whatever you want to put in writing. These are negotiations you can put in writing because you own this business versus somebody else. So just keep that in mind as well. Whatever it is you're thinking of, as long as it's legal, you can negotiate that, put that in a contract, write it up for the business as the sole owner, and then when you bring your children on as when you bring your children on as owners, they can keep those things intact where it works to your benefit without you having to pull money straight out of their hands. Ryan, any words?
I think you summed that up pretty good.
Thank you.
For real.
And for like I said, for those with good credit history and little to no debt, this plan works even better for you because you don't have to sell the business to your children. You can actually just bring your children on as partners, and their credit will grow along with yours, as opposed to someone like myself who has bad credit. So versus trying to establish business credit by spending money and time to raise my credit, I'd much rather just bring my child on as a partner. Once they own the business, they can make the giant business moves with the credit and the long credit line. If I ever am in a position where I need, credit or something like that, or capital to make a move, I'll have to get investors versus going to the bank, which is what I feel is better anyway, because I don't know a person that's going to charge me the same interest rate that a bank would. I would hope if I went to Ryan for some help, he wouldn't charge me the same 11% that Discover is charging.
No, definitely not.
The student loans. And lastly, if you have intentions on working for someone until you die, aka until you receive retirement and Social Security, you should be just as focused on working for yourself and or your children until the same point in time. The reason I said essentially the same thing, working until you die, is because I am very I don't have high hopes for Social Security and retirement for myself by the time I get old, because the baby boomers haven't even started collecting theirs yet. And not to mention all those baby boomers have children, and those baby boomers' children will be having children. And I don't know, man. I just don't see it being as peachy as it may seem. So in order to cushion the blow, if there is a blow there, I'll make sure that me and my children are good by me working for them versus me working for somebody else.
Exactly.
And for those with poor credit history and major debt, like myself, it takes a lot more effort to change your poor credit history versus ensuring your children have good credit history. Just think about this. If your credit is 500 right now and it fell from being 700 at some point in time, what's going to be easier? Getting your stuff back up to 700 and fighting that negative 200 credit history, or starting your children off at the normal 560, paying the bill every month for a year and getting them up to 800 and they're done. You know what I'm saying? And remember, at the end of the day, we're starting these businesses and making these investments for our children anyway. So why not work for our children now as opposed to later? Only thing that's keeping us from doing it is essentially a LLC. But remember, you could still invest. Like, not everybody wants to run a business. Not everybody wants to own a business. Some people just own stocks and assets. That's fine as well. You know what I'm saying? The business is just another asset.
Exactly. You have multiple different assets, so many different assets you can own.
Mm-hmm. Diversify your portfolio. That just doesn't mean a specific portfolio, but all portfolios. And then student loans and credit charge compound interest. So do that every time. So here's a compound interest calculator for you guys. I'll be sending you guys this link as well. But just so you can see what it looks like, essentially this is saying if somebody owed $10,000, was owed, let's say if somebody took out a loan for $10,000 with an interest rate of 3.875, and that essentially what this means is 1/12 of that interest rate is going to be added on every month, as opposed to what a lot of us, do in our calculations before we go to college, because me, I was very good at math. So I tried to do the math on my interest rate, and I'm like, oh, a $10,000 loan, that's only going to add on $1,000 in a year. Not realizing after a month, they already added on 10% of what was left in there. It already started accruing interest. My fault, not 10%, but 1/12 of 10%. That way, by the time they got to the year, it was already way more than $1,000 that I had. So the same works in this here. The $10,000, 3.875 interest rate, you'll get 1/12 of that added in every month when you do this monthly one. And after 7.5 years, they would have paid $13,000 worth versus the $10,000. Let's assume this was like your first student loan or something like that. After 4 years, it would have been $11,000 versus your $10,000. So they added on $673. But you also got to remember, especially when it comes to student loan, this would have been your first student loan. So you would have had this one along with your second one, which would have accrued for 3 years. You add that on, it would have been another 11,002. Then another one for junior year that would have accrued over 2 years. So you would have added on your 10.8. And then you would have had the one for your senior year that accrued for a whole year. And it would have been another 10,003. So you got to think that you're now officially 40 something $1,000 along with the extra change on top of that. And as that accrues over time, because obviously you won't be able to pay the whole 40,000 off immediately, you'll be paying, you know, let's say $300, $400, $500 a month. As that accrues over time, now that this 3.875 is 3.875 of 40,000, not just 3.875 of 10,000. So just so you guys get an idea of that. So the thing here is you do not want to ever be in a situation where you're paying compound interest. The only time you ever want to be concerned with compound interest is when you're earning compound interest.
Exactly.
It should be if you put $10,000 into a stock account, and then every month you were putting in, you know, 1/12 of 3.875%, you know, and watching that grow because it was growing at. Oh no, rather, if you put $10,000 into a stock account that was growing at 3.875%, and every month it was going up little by little, versus waiting a whole year for the 3.875 to come in. So those are the kind of things you got to think about. You want to earn compound interest. You do not want to pay compound interest. And the main ways we all do is student loans and credit cards. Because we all know what it's like paying $200 on our credit card, then we go back 5 days later, and it's basically like we only paid $100 because they just added on another $100. Then the next month you do it again, so you losing $200 just to knock $100 off your bill. And lastly, the most efficient way to pay off debt is in lump sums. Your money must grow at a greater rate than the debt is being collected. So essentially, what I'm saying there is, I don't think you should be paying monthly on your student loan. I think whatever you would have taken monthly to pay your student loan, you should find an investment that grows faster than your student loan and put it on the side and calculate how long it's going to take to pay that off. You can use this calculator here. Let's say if you didn't put in $10,000, if you put in $2,000 and you found an investment that grew at 10%. Oh, sorry. An investment that grew at 10% a year, but every month you were throwing in, you know, an additional whatever 1/12 of $200 is. Over the course of the year, that'd be $2,209. Let's see if you started, you know, with $20,000. See what I'm saying? Like you want this stuff to add up for you.
Mm-hmm.
You started with $16,000, whatever it is. So why pay, you know, this whole $16,000 throughout the year on your loan and it's growing at an awful rate, versus take this money and actually use it towards some investments, build the capital on the side, and when you have the same amount of money as the loan, and if you want to book a consultation with me, I have a degree in electrical engineering. I'm very good at math. We can do the math to literally get you lined up. Whereas if you follow this path, you'll have the same amount in this account as your loan or your credit card has in their account. You can pay the whole thing off at once. Because that's the only way it's not going to affect you. If you try to pay it off every month, little by little, you're straining yourself. And you're obviously making it a lot harder to make investments because you're spending money versus investing money. Why not invest the money until it's at a certain point where you can spend it and make a real impact on your debt versus the minor impact that we are used to making every month.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, anything you'd like to add?
I think that's a good point. Albert Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder in the world. If you understand it, you receive it. If you don't, then you pay it. So you just think about, anything like with the stock, are you collecting interest on it, or are you like going to the mall, and spending money, or, or student loan debt or whatever the case might be, credit card debt, you paying interest on that, or you collecting interest? Like for the house, if you, rent your apartment, if you rent an apartment over a long period of time, each year you see your rent goes up. They put interest on that. Or, you could, if you own the property, you're collecting interest. You're getting interest. The property value is increasing. And, just like with business, are you, collecting, interest or whatever the case may be for being a business owner? Or are you, paying the corporation, buying product and service instead of, receiving money for owning the product and services? So it's just really a paradigm shift, a mind shift. Once you have this knowledge, you see how easy it is to just obtain compound interest.
Thank you. I definitely agree with that, because when I learned about compound interest, I'm like, I'm not paying any more of that than I've already paid.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously.
In no reality, like technically technically I still am paying compound interest. Let's be real here. Like I'm paying off my federal student loans simply because I know they have the capacity to withhold my tax returns and garnish wages and things of that nature. The private student loans, I know that they don't have that effect. So those are the people you need to be attacking. And usually private loans are going to have way higher interest rates than federal loans. I think federal loans have around like 5 and 6%. Like I talked about, Discover has 10 and 11. Chase and these other guys are charging you 7 and 8. And let's not even talk about the one on credit cards. I think I just got an offer in the mail for a credit card that they wanted me to start because I only have one now. And it was like, we'll give you a $4,000 credit line, no credit check. And it's like a 26% interest rate. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, why would someone sign up for this other than I want to spend money right now that I don't have and don't plan on having no time soon? Okay. And some ideas to keep in mind when planning for your family. When planning for your family are multiple streams of income is the key to producing capital. It is also the key to producing wealth. And I can tell you now, multiple streams of income used to be a luxury before, but nowadays it is becoming more and more of a necessity. I don't know anybody that is having a real good time living with one stream of income. I know a lot more people enjoying their time to have multiple.
Exactly.
A diverse investment portfolio will cushion the blow of dips in various industries. So you should diversify each investment portfolio. You should diversify each type of investment portfolio that you have, and also what kind of investments are in that portfolio. So if you have a stock account, you need to diversify. If you have a real estate account, you need to diversify. If you need to have an art collection, you need to diversify. But not only that, if you have a diversified stock account, then that means you need to now dip into other types of investments. So I started out investing in stock. The next thing I started investing in was cryptocurrency. The next thing I'll be investing, technically I started in stock, then went to art. And then I didn't make any money off the art because I'm collecting it. So some money that I got from stocks, I use that on cryptocurrency. And then the next will be using money from the mall to start getting into real estate. But one investment portfolio is always going to lead to the next. That's always how it goes. No one just starts everywhere at the same time. You start one place, get comfortable with it, use the proceeds of it. I like to say no less than 20%, no more than 80%. And you use that on another investment. Do your part to keep your children out of the school, college, and 9-to-5 cycle. It's something that is not going well for many people in any part of the country. Do your part. Don't tell me there's nothing you can do. Either there's things that you can teach them, or there's financial backing that you can give them. Or you could take this video and allow your children to watch this video so they learn these same things. Let's say you're not in a position, to start a business and invest for your children. Now at least you know some ways of putting yourself into position to do those things. Or when you are in position to do those things, what steps to take after that. Business ownership and investing is not taught in public school or college. It is also not encouraged as aggressively as getting a job. And I can say that now. Internships are not about starting businesses. Internships are about getting jobs. But if you have a child who has seen, a Casberry Consulting LLC workshop, they will understand that, okay, when I go to this school, when I go to this job, when I go to this internship, I need to be gathering information that will help me start this kind of company versus get the higher paying job. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to come in as an intern and then learn how to become entry level and then learn how to become the manager. You want to come in as an intern, learn, what entry level does, learn what the managers do, and then start your own business from that. And a company or corporation can invest in all the places an individual can invest. And they do so with much lower tax rates and tax payment frequency. So when it comes to paying taxes, most corporations pay taxes every quarter versus every 2 weeks, which their employees do because the corporations have to withhold the taxes. And they also pay lower tax rates. We all know that already. And that also goes for, when it comes to stocks, you can invest in stocks and, your income get taxed at the employee rate, or you can start a business and start a corporate stock portfolio and your income get taxed at a corporate rate. You can do the same with Forex trading. You can do the same with real estate. You can do the same with, buying equity in other businesses because, yes, a corporation can own another business. It's just a corporation cannot own an S Corp because an S Corp is a pass-through entity. If you want to hear more about that, again, you can go to our What is an LLC workshop with CPA Keith J. Harvey. And every way of building or distributing wealth you plan to do individually, you can and probably should do as a corporation, mostly due to the tax rates, due to the credit lines that you'll have available, due to some of the contracts and negotiations you'll have available. Because like I said earlier, you can negotiate what assets or business is worth as opposed to negotiate how much capital you have is worth. Because no one can give me $100 bill and tell me it's worth any more than $100. You can show me $1 million company and tell me it's worth $100 million. And if you got the right plan, I might believe you. Anything else you wanted to add on to that, Ryan?
No, I don't think so.
And next thing I'd like to speak about is homeschooling. I know this is something that is not the custom nowadays, but it is a growing community. So a growing community that I am technically a part of, although my daughter is only 7 weeks old. So technically, schooling her much. But like I have my own curriculum and everything to teach her. So like she will be homeschooled, and this is something I do think people should implement at home. And just so you know, I'm not saying you need to go pull your kids out of school necessarily, but if you can't, you don't have the resources to homeschool them in-house or do majority of this schooling in-house, at least have certain things that you are teaching them at home, whether that's, diet or, a specific science or math or business or finance or whatever it is. But obviously, finance and entrepreneurship is not going to be taught in their school anyway. So if you understand those things, then obviously that's something that you can immediately implement. But when planning a homeschool, first things you want to do are develop a system to implement before you begin homeschool. So you want to know what kind of schedule you're going to work on. You want to know, what things you're going to be teaching in advance. I'm not saying that you have to stick to that system. You're gonna have to cater it as you go, but you want to have something that you're working with as opposed to it just being all over the place. Because I mean, even some of these schools that a lot of us aren't happy with, have something that they're bringing to the table. They're just not going in their hands. Next, if you don't have the resources to homeschool exclusively, or majority of the time, you can still homeschool outside of school hours. I have some friends who went. My friend Rashid, his parents are from Nigeria. He told me he used to do his homework basically before he got home because his father used to give him his own homework when he got home. Basically, whatever textbook he had for whatever class, his father would take it and give him questions out of it. And sometimes it wasn't even stuff that he was up to yet. And guess what? He had problems that he had to do before he went to bed. I'm not saying that that's what you have to implement, but I'm just saying there is time and there are tools for you to use in order to implement homeschooling. Again, like I said, the number 1 and 2 thing that you can definitely implement right away is entrepreneurship and investment. Uh, Third, be sure to research what schools or programs your children can participate in, relating to team activities. That way they could get social skills. So a lot of people think homeschooling is just one child sitting at a desk in their room with their parent and a chalkboard and they don't go outside, and it's nothing like that. There are people who are homeschooled that are actually, registered with the local, public school and stuff like that. They just get homeschooled at home. They go play sports at the public school. They're in clubs at the public school, chess teams, debate teams, whatever. So, like, that is something you can do. There are different things about it, because some people homeschool for different reasons, whether, they don't want their children learning specific material, or they want their children to learn specific material, or like they don't want to get their children vaccinated or whatever. So obviously, if you don't want your children vaccinated, then you may not be able to put them in school sports. But if that's not it, then obviously sports and clubs and things like that are still available to you. And even if it's not affiliated with the school, there may be nonprofits or other organizations nearby that do have systems in place for that. Fourth, there are many home schooling networks, programs, tutors, and curriculums online for you to try if you don't have one of your own. So, like for myself, I wanted to be hands-on, so I came up with the curriculum based off of everything I learned from public school through college, and I figured out everything that I still use today, and that I know that I should still be using, whether I remember it or not, and I put it in the curriculum. It's not overbearing because it's all things that I learned. I took some stuff out that I did learn that I felt wasn't necessary or wasn't, critical to the learning process. It could go on the back burner, and I'll be learning from there when I implement it. And these are the same things that you could be doing yourself. If you don't want to do it yourself, then you can go on Facebook or Google or wherever you want, Instagram. You can email me, and I'll point you in a few directions as well if you like. For some homeschooling networks online or programs or tutors, I've even taken a class online with a woman who homeschools. What's her name? Talea Kafar or something like that. But she's a Hebrew teacher. She's actually in Israel now. She's from Brooklyn. But there's all sorts, and she predominantly teaches homeschool students online. And now she's also, expanding her brand. But like, these things are out there, and I found her on Instagram. So if I could find a woman of her caliber on Instagram, I'm sure you could find some others out there. And reasons to homeschool. A lot of the public school education is losing funding, as we hear in the news all the time, and doesn't seem to be getting much better. It seems like if your children are in public school, either they're not getting the resources they need, or more than likely, you've already moved them out of public school and put them into a charter school that you may have not been paying for. And it seems like charter schools will become, the basis of public schools now. And if you're going to be paying for schooling, why not be hands-on with what your children are learning, if you have the resources to do so, obviously. And again, you don't have to pay, you don't have to pay 7 different teachers to teach 7 different subjects. You could pay one teacher, to teach a specific subject for a month while you teach another 2. You could, have one tutor that teaches a specific subject on the weekend. Whatever system you have, whatever, schedule you have, just put it consistently and work around it. Restrictions on what teachers are allowed to cover in class and how they are allowed to cover the material in class is something that I hear not only angers students, but also angers teachers. I have more than a few friends that are public school teachers, and they give me all the stuff that they don't like about teaching in public school. There's quite a few that are on their way to teaching online themselves. That way they don't even have to worry about the restrictions and things of that nature, and all the micromanagement and politics that can go on in different schools. And some of the things that there are a lot of arguments about or issues with is religion. Obviously, math. I don't know about the rest of the nation, but I know New York City with the implementation of Common Core, a lot of scores have dropped, a lot of scores have went up, and there's been a lot of frenzy around it. I don't know any kids in elementary school outside of my nieces, and they didn't enjoy Common Core very much. Granted, they were young enough where they didn't learn another way of doing math before Common Core, so it was all they knew. But I remember when I was younger, there was no one way to do math. You learned 3 or 4 different ways to solve a problem. And as long as you used one of them correctly, you were able to get the credit. When it comes to history, there's certain history that's taught that we all know is obviously incorrect. There's a lot of history that isn't taught at all. There's no reason why you should have to go to college before you learn about the one African empire and things of that nature. So, if you're gonna, homeschool, maybe that's something you want to put in. Whether you want to teach your child, certain beliefs, certain mathematical problems, and mathematical procedures. Because I know my wife has a friend who's from Mali, I think. She did her math from left to right as opposed from right to left. Remember when we used to carry the one and do addition and subtraction and stuff? And she used to get the correct answer. So I didn't see an issue with it, but apparently she said growing up, there was a big problem in school because she was doing math like that. I remember when I learned, trigonometry, rather than using a lot of the sine, cosine, tangent equations that they were giving me, because I didn't understand how they were coming up with the equations. I was using simple math, filling up a page and, still getting the same answer, but not receiving the amount of credit I should have gotten. And it was just, things like that should, when test scores are as important nowadays as they are, they shouldn't be, manipulated that way. So I wasn't a fan of it. When it comes to science, obviously there's certain things about science that they, won't budge on and that they teach that are obviously wrong. And there's political views in schools that they teach that some parents may not agree with. Or there's some political views that parents instill in their children that get them in trouble when they go speaking it in school. So these are some of the things that you may want to, research and look into when it comes to homeschooling your children, especially if you don't have the luxury of taking your children out of school. At least when they come back from school, you could look into these different subjects and, implement your own curriculum. And lastly, I'm a firm believer children should be learning throughout the day, not just 7 hours a day. They should be learning essentially every day. I'm not saying you have to sit them down in a classroom to look at a chalkboard every day. But they should be learning and interacting with something new every day throughout the day. It's not like a job that you work 9 to 5. Like, learning is learning. Ryan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, homeschooling is definitely very, very important, man. You know what I mean? Like, especially for our community. Just make sure, I mean, even if, you don't fully homeschool your child, which, realistically is hard, just make sure you're teaching them when they get home. So, they have the teachers and whatever, white teacher from the suburbs or whoever, black teacher, whatever. Just make sure when you get home, you are educating your child as well on stuff that's important. The importance of financial literacy and, wealth building tactics and all that type of stuff, being entrepreneurs, buying black, keeping them in the community, teaching them about Africa and, how we, our history didn't start with slavery and just all that type of stuff. Just the teaching starts in the home. And, I have a lot of teachers that I talk to, current teachers and retired teachers, and always say that, it makes the teacher job a lot easier if the teaching starts at home. But a lot of teachers, they have to do a lot more because a lot of parents don't teach at home. So, at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to teach our children, regardless if they're in public school or not.
Yeah, that's for sure. More homeschooling. When planning a homeschool, you do not have to follow the same schedule as as public schools. As long as your child is able to pass, all state and city exams that they're required to take. Obviously, that's different depending on where you live and everything like that. But I know in New York City, like, I believe if your child doesn't progress or something like even if, let's say, and I could be wrong about this, but this is something I was reading and talking to someone about. Maybe someone who watches this could email me and let me know if they got a better answer. But it was something along the lines of, let's say your child is, essentially supposed to be a 4th grader, and you pull them out and and you have them reading at a 5th grade reading level. And then they get to and then the following year they're in 5th grade, and you still have them reading at a 5th grade reading level. Well, let's say you had them read at a 6th grade reading level, and then when they got to 5th grade, they were still reading at a 6th grade reading level, you'd be essentially, encouraged, if not forced, to put your kid back into school because they're no longer progressing along with their counterparts, even though they're ahead of their counterparts. So I don't know if the person who told me that story, that's something that's still intact, but I know people who that has happened to. Um, Again, you can teach your children during winter break, whatever other breaks there are, summer break. You can teach at night versus teaching during the day if that's easier for you guys. Especially if, let's say, you run a business during the day and you have your child, help out at the business, which is also, they're learning. And then when they get home, they get their, uh, you know, usual teaching scenario where it's, math, reading, writing, etc. You can cover material in a different order, so you don't necessarily have to do, multiplication before division. Maybe some kids understand division better than multiplication, and they understand one before the other. Some kids maybe understand subtraction a little better than addition, whatever it is. But you don't have to run in that same order as long as all the material is covered. And I say this because there's a lot of kids that don't, learn in the same order or at the same pace as a lot of the other kids. And it's basically, the schools have one strict curriculum at one set pace, and kids are basically going to be below it at certain times and above it at others. Most kids aren't going to always be on it. And because of that, it leads to confidence issues. It leads to bad, at least the kids being diagnosed with, all sorts of mess, learning disabilities or things like that they may or may not even have, behavioral disability, behavioral issues due to the lack of confidence. And it could just come from, they need a different teaching setting or a different teaching scenario. I would say look for local homeschoolers that you may be able to work with, as well as a group online. Look for local business owners or even tradespeople who will be willing and able to teach your children about the business, industry, or trade. So I work with a lot of contractors, so I know eventually I'll be in a position where I can have, an electrician or a plumber or something like that teach my children firsthand exactly how to do some things. I know, let's say, my aunt owned a restaurant or something like that, or my friend owned a restaurant, take my child there for, a month or whatever every other day, and they learn around the restaurant, whatever it is, but these are things that your child won't be able to get had you not homeschool them. So make sure all the exclusive things that they only get homeschooling you use. Even if it's on Saturdays, you take them to, I don't care, a karate dojo, and they learn how to run a karate dojo, whatever it is. There's stuff out there that they can learn because there's too much stuff that they're not going to learn from 8 to 3. More reasons to homeschool. You can take control of your child's daily safety when traveling to and from school or while in school. That's a concern for, certain people in certain areas. It allows you to make your own choices regarding your children's health, what medicine they will and will not take. That's, again, regarding vaccines and everything else. Lessons taught in a household seem to leave more of a lasting impression on students than those taught outside of the household. And that just goes back to things that you learn from your parents, like, how to wash your behind. Had you had to learn that in the classroom in 2nd grade, it probably would have been a lot different than, your mom showing you. You were the same age. Students who need more assistance or time on particular subjects can get the isolated help that they need, from their parent, which it usually is a more comfortable learning environment. Not always, because, we may see the memes online about parents yelling the same math problem over and over, louder and louder. But, as long as you have this system in place and you're patient with your child and they're comfortable learning and they're actually excited to learn, trust me, you're doing fine. And students who excel at a faster pace than the school curriculum can get the more advanced work when they are ready instead of waiting. So this is something that I went through growing up. Basically, I remember when I was in, I think, either 3rd or 4th grade, I was done with my homework, and I was always like really, really good at math. So I walked into my room. My sister, who's 6 years older than me, 6 years and 6 months, I'm like, well, let me see your math homework. I bet you I could do it. Little did I know she was doing algebra, and I hadn't seen algebra before, so I couldn't do it. So she taught me algebra when I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And from that point on, public school was essentially playing catch up with what I knew for math. So by the time they started, teaching algebra in like 6th and 7th grade, I had already known it for 2 years. So I was, trying to learn with what my sister was learning. So she went away to college. So, just think about that. You may have a child, especially some with behavior issues, which I apparently had. I still don't believe I did. But, some kids with behavioral issues, some of them are falling behind. Some of them are just bored because they can do their work. Like I had friends, and I have my teacher on Facebook who can attest to it, in which we figured out in elementary school, if we just did our work quickly and got it all done and correct, we could hang out. So it encouraged us to pay attention when we went over it so we could do our work quickly and hang out in class. And, had they had, something in place where they could give us more advanced work, then we would have never had that scenario, going back and forth with a teacher saying, oh, I did my work, so why can't I talk, and things like that. If your child doesn't have these issues, then obviously you don't have to worry about that. But I know that there are many that do. Ryan, anything?
No, yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, and some more reasons to homeschool. Many high schools encourage students to attend college, even when students are not academically prepared for college. And here's an article from 2016. Basically stating that high graduation rates do not correlate to college readiness. Here are some results from 2013, basically because they only put out the data every 3 years. But in 2013, only 26% of high school graduates were proficient or advanced in mathematics, and 38% were proficient or advanced in reading. When it got to 2015, just 2 years later, the numbers actually went down 1%, even though the graduation percentage had gone up. I know in New York City, this is a very big thing because there's actually a lot of principals. Like I had a principal who was, taken out of the school simply because they were doing shaky stuff trying to get a higher graduation rate, whether that was passing kids through that weren't supposed to be passed, or, finding ways to kick kids out that weren't expected to graduate on time simply because they knew the school would give more funding for a higher graduation rate. But then again, like all these kids graduated and a bunch of them did poorly in college or didn't go to college. So, I mean, was it really worth it for the school? Who knows? Second, college is too expensive to send a student who's not prepared for it. If you're going to be spending $25,000 a year for your child to learn, like you better make sure that your child is going to be able to get that material and understand, in a reasonable amount of time. And if your child was not even taught in the same setting as that college, then maybe you want to take control of that and make sure that they're ready for that setting. Maybe after they graduate high school, you run them through some courses, or you maybe let them, go as a part-time student, literally take one class and see, how they do and things like that. And that's if you want to send your kids to college, because I'll be honest, not everybody has to go to college. If you have a plan, because I like, especially my high school clientele, we come up with post-graduation plans all the time, and quite a few of them didn't need college to get to that plan. So it was like, do you want to go to college now and push your business off to the back burner, or do you want to start your business when you graduate high school, and then when you got some money in your hands, then go to college and reap the tax benefits of it? And, some made different decisions. The homeschooling community is growing every year. Like I already stated, and here's another article to give you some numbers on it. But essentially, homeschooling has been growing, I think, at like 2 or 3% or something like that every year. What is it? Yeah, it appears homeschool population is continuing to grow at an estimated 2% to 8% per year over the past few years. And this is going as recent as spring of 2016. Then more reasons and motivations for home educating, customize, individualize your curriculum, accomplish more academically than in schools. What else? Enhance family relationships between children and parents and among siblings, provide guided and reasoned social interaction with peers. yada, yada, yada. I'll also be sending you guys this link. All the links that I'll put up, in this PowerPoint, you'll also be getting it, so don't worry. And schools also don't teach from a global perspective, in which I'll go over exactly what a global perspective is. But yeah, those are some more reasons. And then when it comes to homeschooling, I figured since I told you guys I came with my own curriculum, this is it not as detailed just because it would have been a lot more words on the page. But essentially, the math obviously is something that I'm a big what do you call it? I encourage math. Number one, like I think math is more important than being that. Let me not say more important than reading and writing, but math. Like let's say you are the best English reader or writer on the planet, and you can't do math. When you leave a country whose main language isn't English, you're not very useful. But if you're the best mathematician on earth, you don't have to speak a lick of English. Apparently to teach a class over here, because there's some professors who don't speak very good English at all. I know because most of them taught math and engineering. But yeah, math, addition and subtraction, multiplication and division, algebra, PEMDAS is the orders of operation, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, geometry and trigonometry, calculus and differential equations. I like to say apply to the real world because there are some sections of calculus and differential equations which are like a lot more. It's more about computer calculating, and like if you're going to use a computer, why are you doing the calculations by hand? It's a lot of waste of time unless you're really into that stuff. But when it comes to differential equations, basically the formula for interest, to calculate interest, or when it comes to compound interest, or they also call it decay if it's going at a negative rate as opposed to positive. That's all formulas from differential equations. When it comes to if you have a small hole in the side of a bowl and you have water pouring into the bowl and it goes for an hour, will the water rise to the top and overflow, or will it sink to the bottom? Things of that nature. This is all differential equations, and obviously it can be applied to the real world very easily, like the scenarios I just told you. Whether it's finance or physics or simple calculations. Like if you wanted to think about differential equations for another version of finance, you could think about how fast you're making money for one investment versus how fast you're losing money, and use differential equations to figure out when you'd hit equilibrium and if one would surpass the other afterwards. And lastly, probability and statistics, because that'll also help you out when it comes to normal decision making along with business decisions. Science, biology, part of that would be nutrition and things of that nature, and hygiene. Earth science, physics, and botany, because I'm coming from a more urban perspective because I grew up in New York City, but most people don't know much about plants, especially when it comes to the medicinal value of them. So when it comes to botany, let's say you actually knew how to grow your own food. Just imagine how much you'd save, whether it's on the grocery bill or the doctor bill. Or if you could actually plant and crop land to feed a community versus just feeding your home, which could save a community a lot of money, and be able to take that money that they were spending and invest it towards something else that will help the community. But that's just something that I think is important, so I definitely needed to add that in there. Reading, writing, and language, because I'm a big supporter of people speaking more than one language, simply because it allows you to embrace other cultures, number one, and also it gives you a bigger target audience when it comes to whether you're applying for a job or doing business. Now, let's say if you speak English and Spanish versus just English, now you can do business here. You can do business in Mexico and DR and Puerto Rico. Like, obviously, you could do business in those places if you spoke English, but if you spoke Spanish, it'd be a lot easier for you because, you'd seem like a regular versus an outsider that people don't understand all the time, things like that. But yeah, I'm going to have open-ended writing and questioning, persuasive and informative writing, poetry, short stories, and proverbs, editing and translating, conveying ideas accurately using language selection and word choice, because there's certain ideas or thoughts that you may want to convey. It's a lot easier to say them in one language than another, because one language may have words to describe a particular scenario that another language may not. Or, a saying in one language may have a more specific meaning, more accurate meaning than, saying the same one in another language. And the importance of communication, again, because not only business, but social skills. Imagine if you couldn't speak any languages. It would be a lot harder to just live your daily life. History. African empires, Aboriginal peoples from across all continents, colonialism across continents, rebellion of philosophy, instances of history repeating itself, and historic times and events that shape society today and that are similar to today. And that essentially tie back into instances of history repeating itself. And that's mostly because I never really learned about any African empires until my senior year of college, when I took an African class, African civilization class. And the craziest part about it was the first picture that we saw in the class wasn't even an African dude. It was some dude coming in to put a colony. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. I didn't really appreciate it. And then more in my curriculum will be trades, so driver's ed, because if you think about it nowadays, you need a driver's license a lot more. A driver's license will get you a lot more jobs and a lot farther than a college degree would. Basic household electrical work, basic household plumbing work, how to clean and maintain a home, and how to research and cross-reference, especially with all the misinformation online. That's something that I think would be big going up for our children, because obviously there will be nothing but more information online, whether it's good, bad, right, or wrong, by the time they start going to do their own research. Finance, entrepreneurship, and law, in which will cover taxes, insurance, loans and interest, business / entrepreneurship and investing, federal, state, and city laws, and also corporate laws, because obviously you want to know how the laws, what business laws are intact in whatever state that you open your business in, because you may not have a business registered in the same state that you live in. When it comes to arts, music, dance, photography, painting, drawing, filming, acting, obviously if she wanted to do some other art, or if I had a son, wanted to do some other type of art, then it's that art. But here's the ones that I have people who can teach that, so that's why they're there. And physical fitness, and combat and or self-defense, whatever you want to call it. Sports, self-defense, calisthenics, chess, because when I first started to learn chess as a kid, I was pretty good at it. I was taught chess as like a war game versus, just checkers, a smarter version of checkers. I was taught, this is a king and he has the queen next to him because he doesn't want his queen to die, and puts the pawns up there because they're weaker, and this is war, and da-da-da-da, And lastly, war strategy and tactics, because a lot of people out here just, there's a lot of crime going on out here, so why not understand how to protect yourself, and with, how can I explain it? With the disagreements between different groups, in this country and around the world, you kind of want to be able to recognize what different war tactics are out there and whether or not some are being used on you. It may not be, war that's being imposed on you, but you want to notice these things because it will make you feel, what's the term I'm looking for? You won't feel comfortable when it's happening to you, whether you notice it or not. That's for sure. And Ryan, anything about the homeschooling section or curriculum?
I love it. I think you definitely summed it up perfectly. It's hard to follow up everything that you just said. Honestly, I think you literally laid out everything. Everything I could think of, would think of, I really think you laid it out.
Cool. And I made this curriculum long before my daughter. I wrote this up probably like 3 months, 4 months after I graduated college, because I was just like, I'm gonna end up having a child sooner or later, because I've been with my wife since high school. So it's like, I already knew what it was. So I was like, let me just get this ready, because I'm not trying to send. I just thought about, I was like, would I want to send my daughter to all the schools that I went to? And the answer was no. And it was like, because if she's nearly as smart as me, I don't want her wasting her time. And if she's nowhere near as smart as me, I want to be the one that takes her to that next step. So yeah, I've had this in place. I've had this ready for going on a year now, if not already a year. And then earlier when I talked about schools don't teach from a global perspective, I'm a firm believer in globalizing your children's skills. Basically meaning all the skills that they have, they should either be able to use them, in different scenarios with different people in different parts of the world or whatever. And they should also be able to notice, and appreciate, different cultures and different people in different parts of the world. So some steps that you could take to implement that are teaching your children multiple languages. One thing that I was told, which I also am more than excited to see if it'll work, is teaching various subjects in multiple languages will give students more opportunity to practice multiple languages, thus making it easier for them to use them all. So for instance, when I was in high school, I spoke English. I took French class, and then I hung out with a lot of people from Dominican Republic. So I actually got really good at Spanish, to the point I was able to trick a few people to think that I was from DR, because I just told a story, in Spanish that was believable, right? And what ended up happening? I think I went to college in Vermont, and probably after my first semester, I forgot basically every lick of Spanish I knew. I knew a tiny bit of French because I took another French class in college. But had I been, when I was using Spanish, I basically only used it for basketball and food and talking to girls and stuff like that. But I never, talked about how to cook in Spanish. I never did math in Spanish. I never talked about U.S. history in Spanish. So it's like, had I done all those things in Spanish, like some of the people who have implemented these things have done with themselves or with their children, one, it makes it a lot easier for them to switch from language to language, because there's some people who, when they get, let's say they speak, Arabic, when they start speaking Arabic, it's hard for them to, get back to English, even though it's easy for them to go from English to Arabic, or vice versa. Or it's even some people, it's hard for them, to translate from one to another. They can either speak in one or speak in the other, but, they don't feel right, hearing one and then speaking back in whatever other language. And it also, if you can do math in multiple languages, that obviously makes you a better asset than you doing math in one language, because now you can also teach that math in multiple languages. And also widens their business market and makes it easier for them to attain assets overseas. So obviously, it's a lot easier for you to do business in, China if you actually speak Chinese, versus if I just went out there right now trying to get a contract. Second, teach them a trade, any trade, preferably something physical like welding, so electrician, whether it's physical, being a physical trainer, whatever it is. Like, and they should know how to do something with their hands or body, that makes them useful, on the West Coast and the East Coast and another country when it's hot and when it's cold. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would they only be able to work, in the summertime or some ways where it's hot? So you're telling me if it's below freezing outside, there's nothing they can do. You're telling me, if you take them to another country where, it's just, a little more rain than usual, they can't do their job or something like that. You want to teach them something that they can do anywhere, anytime. And, being, splicing a copper wire is the same no matter where you're at.
Absolutely.
And dual citizenship is something I like people to look into. My daughter is fortunate enough where her mom was born in Ghana, so it'll be pretty easy for her to get dual citizenship. But after doing some research some years back, I found out that many people in this country would be able to get dual citizenship in Ghana. Anyway, that's not what I'm about to show here, but this is just some advantages and disadvantages of having dual citizenship. Just let me scroll down. There we go. We'll just scroll down here. The fact that you can carry 2 passports. Now, I've yet to leave the country. My first time in the country will be coming later on this year. But as a dual citizen, you're allowed to carry passports from both countries. For example, if you're from the U.S. and you're also a New Zealand citizen, you can have a passport from both. Having a citizen's passport eliminates the need for long stay visas and questioning about the purpose of your trip. It also guarantees right of entry to both countries, which can be especially important if you have to visit family, are a student, or do business in either country. Property ownership. Another benefit of dual citizenship is the ability to own property in either country. Some countries restrict land ownership to citizens only, and as a legal citizen in 2 countries, you'll be able to purchase property in either or both. Obviously, that would help you out if you travel frequently to both countries. And cultural education. A dual citizen, you'll reap the benefits of being immersed in the culture of 2 countries. Some government officials are also fond of dual citizenship and see it as a way to promote the country's image as a prime destination for tourists. Perhaps the best upside is self-satisfaction of learning about the history of 2 countries, a new language, and way of life. Some drawbacks that you will want to be aware of are dual obligations. A dual citizenship. As a dual citizen, you are bound by the laws of both countries. For example, if you're a U.S. citizen and if you're a citizen of the United States and a country with a mandatory military service, you can lose your U.S. citizenship under certain circumstances, such as if you serve as an officer in a foreign military that's engaged in war against the U.S. Double taxation. The U.S. imposes taxes on citizens for income earned everywhere in the world. If you're a dual citizen living abroad, you might owe taxes to both the U.S. and to the country where your income is earned. Income tax treaties are in effect, however, between the U.S. and many other countries that reduce or eliminate the U.S. citizens' tax liability in the United States. So that's something you also want to look into, depending on what country you plan on getting dual citizenship with. Security clearance. Depending on your career path, dual citizenship can be a disadvantage if you're seeking a position with the U.S. government or access to classified info. Having dual citizenship can prevent you from gaining security clearance you need to work in these fields. So I remember I had a friend in college who could have had dual citizenship in Italy, but he chose not to because he was going to be in the army and wanted to get security clearance. And apparently it's just a complicated process. Sometimes dual citizenship happens automatically, like when a child is born here, but both parents are foreign. Other times, however, the process can take many years and be extremely expensive. To become a U.S. citizen, you must live in the United States as a permanent resident continuously for 5 years. You can read the rest. But at the end of the day, I feel like dual citizenship is more positive than a negative for sure. It seems like the only things with the negative is just it's not convenient in certain situations, as opposed to the many conveniences that it does have. Here's another link. Some more benefits of dual citizenship: visa-free travel, the ability to buy a new home, the abundance of business opportunities overseas, and education. So obviously, if you have dual citizenship in a country with free education for its citizens, you can go there for free. You can go there, and get educated for free, especially if it's a country who has better education than what you were going to receive here in the United States, particularly pertaining to college, as opposed to high school or elementary school. Security. If you're at risk of violence, persecution, or unfair discrimination, investing in a second citizenship can help you remove yourself from a country that's burdened with danger. And a guarantee for the future. Obtaining a second citizenship can be passed on to your children, ensures their protection, economic well-being, and educational advantages. And they'll be available to your family for generations to come. And reasons to teach with a global mindset. Children will be able to understand other cultures more easily. Children will be able to earn income in multiple countries. There's so much information online uh, to learn as much as you want about, any subject or any culture or any place on earth. Um, it'll show that there are numerous ways to solve a problem or present and explain an idea. Because if you look at how long division or you know three and four character number multiplication. So let's say like 2090 times 5222. It's done totally different here than it's done in Japan. I'm sure it's done different in Japan than it's done in India, and then different in India than it's done in Nigeria, however. So if you're able to teach if you're able to teach your child different ways to solve the same problems, whether it's math or English or a social problem, now they have more options as to what they can do. Again, another instance of where you can essentially diversify your investment portfolio. And lastly, it'll assist them with accepting foreign medical and dietary changes to help fight disease. Again, that's pertaining to whatever medications you may get for whatever you may have whatever your doctor may prescribe you for whatever illness you may or may not have. Some prescriptions are too aggressive for some people. They rather go with a older or more quote unquote Eastern type of medicine. So if you can learn these things just from as a youngin, you won't have to worry about being an adult, and spending a bunch of money and stressing out, too late, which you could have implemented these different dietary and medical procedures early in life. Anything you'd like to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think you summed it up for real. Cool. Ready to get cracking on this retirement, man. For real. That's what I'm prepared for.
Yeah. So, quick question, Ryan, do you homeschool by any chance or not?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I wish I could. I just honestly don't have the ability right now.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I just been seeing you with your daughter more, like in the videos and stuff. So I was like, I don't know what he.
I wish I could. I just trying to run the business and do that. It would just be.
Yeah, I feel you.
Easy right now, but that's definitely the ultimate goal. But just right now, I'm just not able to do it right now.
Yeah, most people, that's not even the ultimate goal. That's the issue.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's definitely the ultimate goal. You know what I mean? But I mean, she definitely knows. She gets her education though from me. She knows. She already ready.
That's what's up. But yeah, so now we're on to classic retirement investments that our guest mediator Ryan McCrary will have more than enough expertise on, and he'll be taking the ropes from here.
Absolutely. So, hi guys. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Ryan McCrary. I'm the CEO and founder of McCrary Financial Solutions. We provide financial solutions through financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and digital marketing. So right now we're going to be talking about retirement accounts, like 401k accounts, IRA accounts, all that type of stuff. The first, main things people think about are like 401ks. So 401ks are retirement plans usually offered through your employer. So one of the main things, number one, if your company has a retirement plan that the company you work for, make sure you take advantage of it. You don't know how many people I talk to or run into or come across that have benefits or have plans at their company. They don't take advantage of them. You got to take advantage of them, especially if the company matches. A lot of companies match. They'll match up to like 5 or 10%. And then, they'll put extra money in, all that type of stuff. And, basically what a 401k is, your money goes in pre-tax. So it comes straight from your paycheck, but it's pre-tax. It's before you're taxed, and it goes straight into an investment account. And then it grows tax deferred. So it'll come out, you won't pay tax on it when it comes out, and then it'll grow throughout the life of the account without paying taxes on it. The only time you would pay tax on your 401k money is when you withdraw it. So as long as you're over 59 and a half, you can withdraw it without any penalty, and you just pay normal tax on your earnings. Why do we do that? Because usually when you're working, you're in a higher income tax bracket. And when you're retired, you're usually in a lower income tax bracket. So when you take the money out, you have less of a tax liability because you're retired. Now, there are other options. If you need to dip into it, you can. You pay a 10% penalty, and then, ordinary income tax also. And if you're not retired, you're probably in a higher tax bracket. So the tax liability is a lot higher. But at the same time, that still can be used as an asset if you need it, if you have an emergency. A lot of times you can borrow against your 401k if you want to like buy a house for education, or there are, a lot of different loopholes, to get money out without having a tax liability. Anything specific on that, I would strongly suggest you speak to like a tax advisor or an accountant, because they can go over specific loopholes on how to have a less tax liability if you have to dip into your 401k. But I would strongly suggest if you don't have to, then just let it grow, let it grow tax deferred, pay any tax on it. And then when you're retired, when you're in low income tax bracket because you don't earn as much money, you take it out, less tax liability, and that is your, that's your money. That's your nest egg. That's what you can use, to go on vacation or for living expenses, whatever the case may be. So like I said, the main thing is if you have a 401k offered at your job, make sure you take advantage of it. See if they match, if they do match, how much they match. You want to know what type of investments you have. Want to know what investment company your job uses for the investments for the 401k or retirement plan, whatever the case may be. If you work in like a nonprofit, or if you're a teacher, you probably have a 403b. If you're like a government worker, they have like TSPs, which are thrift savings plans, or stuff like that. The main thing is, though, take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. And a lot of people that do have 401ks and do take advantage of it, they still don't know what they're invested in. So that can definitely be another issue, because you want to know how your money's invested. You want to know if you're properly allocated. You don't want to be 30 or 35 years old and you're invested in something conservative or like a money market where you're not getting any interest, and you're not going to retire for 30, 40 years. You want to be aggressive. Usually you want to be aggressive when you're younger, to capitalize on those gains. The more risk, the more reward, because you have time on your side. One of the main things about the stock market is having time on your side, and being able to let the account grow. You won't touch it, take some risk on, because you don't need the money for 30, 40 years. So that's just one of the main things for 401ks. Now, there are also IRAs. IRA is a individual retirement arrangement, whereas though, let's say you don't have, or your company doesn't have a 401k, they just don't offer it, or you want to invest outside of your 401k. So you may have a 401k, and you say, I want to have more retirement savings. You can have an IRA. There are many different types of IRAs. I'm not going to go into all of them just for the nature of this course. But there are, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs. There are, a couple more, I believe. A traditional IRA is very similar to a 401k. So the money would go in pre-tax, before tax, and it would grow tax deferred. And when you're ready to use the money in retirement, as long as you're over 59 and a half, you will not get penalized. Also, traditional IRAs have something called a required minimum distribution. So that means when you're 70 and a half, you are required to take out at least a certain amount of money from your traditional IRA. And repeat that again. For traditional IRAs, there's something they call it an RMD, required minimum distribution. So meaning you're required to take out a certain amount of money. The age for that starts at 70 and a half. So a lot of people will have their IRA money, tucked away, and I'm like, I don't need it. But then if you haven't used it yet and you're 70 and a half or older, you're required to take a certain amount out. Then the amount is calculated by like the IRS. Actually, they go by like how old you are, your life expectancy, stuff like that. And then each year, so let's say you have an investment with Vanguard or T. Rowe Price. Each year, they'll call you and let you know and say, listen, you're over 70 and a half now. They'll send you probably that correspondence via mail or email, maybe even cold calls, and say, listen, you're 70 and a half now. You're required by the IRS to take a certain amount of money out. This is the amount of money you have to at least take this out. You can take more, but you have to at least take this out just to be compliant with the IRS. And I've actually seen cases where people didn't do it, and then you have all type of tax issues because at the end of the day, the IRS wants their money. So whether you wait and you say, all right, I'm not gonna touch my money, but then when you're 59 and a half, they really want you to take the money out because they want the tax on the money. But even if you wait, like I said, when you get to 70 and a half, they make it required for you to take the money out because they want their money regardless. The other main IRA is a Roth IRA. Roth IRA, the way that works is money goes in after tax. So when you put money into a Roth IRA, it's after tax, it's money you've already paid tax on, but it still grows tax deferred. You don't pay tax on the interest you accrue. But the main difference is as long as you're 59 and a half or older and you've had the account for at least 5 years, that's a tax-free distribution. So let's say I put 5, 10, 20,000 in after tax, but then it grows to 30, 40, 50, 100, $200,000. As long as I'm over 59 and a half and I've had the account for at least 5 years, all the interest I got in a Roth IRA comes out tax-free. So that is definitely something you want to be aware that exists. You want to take advantage of it. And Roth IRAs don't have required minimum distributions. Like traditional IRAs, they don't have a required minimum distribution. Now, there are certain limits on Roth IRAs, meaning like if you make, I think it's like if you make over like 125 or 130,000 a year, you actually are not eligible to invest in a Roth IRA. A lot of people, they don't make that much anyway, but there are certain little, requirements and stuff like that. But the main thing about that is it's post-tax money and it's basically a tax-free distribution as long as you're over 59 and a half, and you have the account at least 5 years. Also, we have trust funds or trust accounts on there. Those are definitely good ways to build wealth. Now, trust accounts aren't necessarily retirement accounts per se. They can be used for that. When you're in retirement, you have a trust account. Of course, you can take the money out and use it during retirement, but they're not really retirement accounts per se, only because of the tax. The main goal of IRA accounts or 401k retirement accounts are the tax savings. You get out tax deferred or tax free. Trust accounts, they don't usually have those tax loopholes and implications because they're not designed as retirement accounts, but they can still definitely be used in retirement. So other questions you guys may have, how does a company start their own retirement program for owners and employees? So yeah, if you have a business and you want to start a retirement account, there's something like a SEP IRA that is like a small business IRA that you can start for yourself or your employees. And then there's like a simple IRA that's kind of like a pension. But those are, the SEP IRAs and the simple IRAs are people that are business owners, people that have employees. If you want to offer retirement accounts for your employees, you probably want to go with the SEP IRA, SEP IRA, or a simple IRA. Let me see what other questions we may have. How is the money actually being used to give me a return? Is the average return on investment? I mean, that's going to depend on what investment you choose. So there's a difference between like having an investment fund and the type of account. So I can have a stock, or I can have a mutual fund or something like that. But I can have that in about 10 different types of accounts. So I can have an IRA that holds stocks or bonds or mutual funds, but I could also have, just a regular non-retirement account or a trust account or a 529 account that holds the same investments. So the return on the investment is going to depend on what it's actually invested in, not necessarily what type of account it is. A lot of people think an account and investment is the same thing, which it is not. You can have the same investment, but have it in a different account. So I can have a non-retirement account with the same stock as a retirement account, but the difference is going to be how I'm taxed. What's the goal of the investment? But as far as the return on the investment, probably it'll be the same because it's invested in the same fund. So it's just I want something I want people to really be clear on. Also, what would you consider a better or just a good investment for retirement? Um, I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, it's probably not that many just because of the tax implications. So, like I said before, the main goal of retirement accounts are the tax implications, the tax breaks, the tax loopholes. So, if it's not a retirement account, most other investments just aren't designed to have the tax breaks. So, not too many. The one that's closest that I can think of is probably a 529 college savings plan. A 529 plan works the same way as a Roth IRA, kind of. With the 529 college plan, it goes in after tax. The money goes in after tax, and then it grows tax deferred. You don't pay tax on the interest. And as long as you take the money out and use it for education expenses, it's a tax-free distribution. Actually, the tax law that just changed, it actually just changed 529 plans. 529 plans, they used to have to only be used for college. So only if you use the money for college, higher education, or above, you get the money out tax free. But now they actually implement it where you can use it for any form of education. It doesn't have to just be college, and you still get it out tax free. So like a Roth, you put the money in after tax, and then it's tax free when you take it out, as long as you have the account for at least 5 years and you're over 59 and a half. For 529, the money is still after tax and it's tax free when you take it out, as long as when you use the money, it's used for education expenses. Now, people may say, okay, how are they going to know that we use it for education expenses? That's a very good question. Well, you could be audited. So I could take money out, 10,000, 20,000 out of my daughter's hospital not plan and say, yeah, I use it for college. Absolutely. Yep, yep, yep. Then I get an audit. I get a bill in the mail and say, okay, we see you took 20,000 out of your 529 plan. We want to see receipts that showed you used it for education expenses. And if I don't have those receipts, I'm going to have tax issues. So it is not something that happens right away. You might not even ever get audited, but you definitely could get audited. And if you do get audited, you don't want to say use it for college, but you don't have the receipts to back it up. Three people I don't mess with is the I, the R, and the S. So I was trying to suggest if you whatever you say you're going to use it for, use it for that. Another question is, how do you budget and start a trust fund for your children? That's very easy. The first thing you have to do is you have to start a legal trust. Before you want to start an investment trust, you have to start a legal trust. So you go to a lawyer, a state attorney, or any type of attorney that does trust accounts, and you say, I want to develop a trust account. They say, okay, what do you want the name of the trust to be? Who can act on it? Who's your successor trustee if you pass away? Who's going to take it over? They draft a whole bunch of documents, probably like 20, 30, 40-page document of legal trust you have in place about who can act on it, what happens if you die, blah, 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 blah. Once you have the legal document, you go to an investment company like a Vanguard or Schwab, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, and say, I want to open an investment trust account. And they say, okay, send us your legal documents, like who can act on it, whose account is it, whose name is the account going to be in. If you die, who's going to take over this investment trust? So you would send in, fax in, or send in your documents, and that will just open the trust account. And then once the trust account is opened, then you can pick the type of investments you want for it. So like I said, there's a difference between accounts and investments. So you can have a trust account, retirement account, 529 plan, whatever it is. And then they can all have the same investment, but they're different type of accounts and they work differently. So you can have the same stocks, the same bonds, same mutual funds in all the accounts, but depending on what type of account it is, depending on, what your flexibility is, what your tax implications, what you can do and so forth. And then would private debt collectors be able to take these accounts? I don't think so. That's what I'm not 100% sure on, but I'm probably 90% sure that I think they are protected. I believe they are protected from debt collectors. I believe these assets are protected.
Okay,
go to the last slide, bro. Or it's just the last slide? Is there one more?
Yeah, just the last one.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I hope that pretty much summed up retirement. Like I said, I mean, retirement can get deep. I could talk for hours about it, but I don't want to get too in depth with it. For more information, you can definitely contact me. Send me an email, info@ryanjmccrary.com. info@ryanjmccurry.com. I'd love to help you. My website is there, ryanjmccurry.com. You can schedule a one-on-one session if you want to talk more in depth about that stuff. But yeah, I mean, the main thing is if you have a 401k through your company or your job offers it, take advantage of it. If not, you can do an IRA. Even if you have a 401k, you can still do an IRA. Also, you can develop a trust account. You can get a 529 plan, stuff like that. But the main goal is do something. Do something. Take action. Regardless, take action. That's the main thing. If you take nothing else from this workshop, just make sure you take action. Make sure you do something. We laid out so many resources for you to, be able to take action. We laid out so much information, so many jewels. So you can't say, I don't know how to do it. That's not an excuse. A lot of people say, I don't invest or I don't get a 401k or a retirement account because I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I'm doing. You can't use that excuse anymore because we just told you how to do it. So if you're really serious about building wealth and building for your family, having a comfortable retirement, make sure you invest for retirement. So last questions. What companies do you own? What services do they offer? So I own McCurry Financial Solutions. We offer many services, one-on-one coaching, advertising services, digital marketing services. Also have the McCurry Financial School. So it's an online school. You can go to themccurryfinancialschool.com, themccurryfinancialschool.com. We have about 4 or 5 courses now, more to come soon. And also, lastly, ourblackapparel.com, ourblackapparel.com. That is the e-commerce clothing store. I have a lot of different products. Our best seller is the financially literate apparel. So you can get that at ourblackapparel.com, ourblackapparel.com. What are some investments you have made towards your children's future? Definitely 529 plans, and definitely just buying stocks. Like I'm big on just like going in like how do I feel? I feel like buying Walmart. I'm gonna buy Walmart. I feel like buying Target. I'm gonna buy Target. Snapchat, Facebook. Basically, what I use. I have like Gildan T-shirts. I bought some Gildan stock. Apple. I got the iPhone, so I buy Apple. Like the share stock in Apple is less than the iPhone. The pair of Nike is less than the Jordans. Like you know what I'm saying? So. If you're watching Love and Hip Hop or whatever reality show, if you buy a share of stock in Viacom, that's probably less than your cable bill. So I say invest what you use, but you don't have to do that. That's just personally what I do. Let me see. What points that we covered would you recommend viewers pay loose attention to and be sure to implement? I mean, honestly, all of it.
My fault. Pay close attention to.
Close attention to. I mean, honestly, all of it. But definitely retirement. Homeschooling is important too. I mean, honestly, all of it.
Gotcha.
What is the bulk of your clientele typically in need of, searching for help with? Mostly stock buying. Like a lot of people just really don't know how to buy stocks and stuff like that. Also, just business development, how to start a business, how to start an online business, how to start an e-commerce store. Those are probably the main ones. What upcoming events, releases, promotions, offers do you have coming up soon? Any moves you are working over later? Wasn't going to mention it, but I think I will mention it. I do have a book coming out. I won't tell you the title, but I'm going to tell you that there is a book coming out. It should be out by the summer. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Subscribe to my email list so you can just, be on the lookout for when that drops. Also, I do have a free financial course if you want it. Go to financiallyliteratenow.com. Don't forget the now. financiallyliteratenow.com. I can type it in, financiallyliteratenow.com. It's a free financial course, and that also will subscribe you to my email address. That will also subscribe you to my email and then my email list, and then you will also, be on the lookout and be notified when my book is released. So that's the main thing we got coming out. I got a couple new courses as well coming into the school, but the main thing I'm working on is the book. That should be out by the summer, and that book will literally change your life. So make sure you grab it. Thank you, Trav, for allowing me to be a part of this amazing workshop.
Thank you for joining us, and hopefully everybody got all questions answered that they could have had. If not, feel free to email me at info@castleberry.com. My personal email address is trev@castleberry.com, which is TREV@castleberry.com. Find me on Instagram at Castleberry Consulting. You can find Ryan on Instagram at myownboss87. Obviously, go to our website, castleberry.com. And if you would like to be up to date on any specials or offers or events or anything coming up with Casberry Consulting or any of our affiliates, you can always go to CasberrySuccess.com. And that's where we'll have all of that coming up. I actually wasn't gonna talk about it until our last workshop, but this upcoming spring, probably in April, I'll be bringing in the Casberry Success Program, which I'll be taking anywhere from 4 to 8 clients, business partners, or households, and taking them on a 6-month journey. They learn everything from financial literacy to stock buying, opening their own business, and not just learning how to, but literally I will be there coaching you to open that business, operate that business, expand that business, learn how to buy stocks, manage your stocks. I'll have my personal foreign exchange trainer training you guys, and you'll have me there to help you along the way. You'll also have my personal crypto consultant, which was here for the last workshop, You Must Invest, Daniel Mon. He may possibly be there to help you guys with any crypto advice, and we'll go over some real estate. So be on the lookout for that. And I guess now I'll mention it at the end of every workshop. So thanks again, Ryan. And remember, please reach out to Ryan, because not only is Ryan a good asset to have in your corner, but I've used Ryan for some. I've paid Ryan for some consultations and got some great work out of it. Not only will he help you out, but obviously he'll do things like come and drop some jewels on your workshops. So please make sure you reach out to Ryan, and please have a good day and invest in your children. Have a good night.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Good night.